got the distribution call, you got the placement, you did everything right. And somewhere between the purchase order and the shelf, something went sideways. Your product isn't there, or it's there, but it's wrong. Or nobody can tell you either way. Your CPG brand hits this wall, most of them hit it more than once. I'm Jordan Karcher, founder and CEO of Iley. Know Thy Shelf is a show for founders and CPG superstars who are done taking anyone's word for what's happening at the shelf. And we're really going to dive in today into some real stories, real data, and try to answer one question. Your product is listed as in stock. Is it though? Today, I'm speaking with David de Oliveira, the Chief Commercial Officer for Bozal Mezcal. His career spans decades in the bev alc world, and we'll be discussing how he's building Bozal and other brands, effectively creating new categories from the ground up. David, you have a wealth of experience in CPG in the bev alc space, starting from early e-commerce to consulting across multiple spirits brands. I'd love if you could give us a brief journey of how did you get into the bev alc industry in the first place, and then how did you land at Bozal?
Yes. Hi, Jordan. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Always happy to share a good conversation about topics that we both love. And I can mention back to my days in Venezuela, where I'm originally from, South America. I used to work in different CPG companies, all the way from Nestle to Philip Morris, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And one day had an opportunity, just came out of the blue through a headhunter and said, have you heard about Diageo? And I never knew what Diageo was, because you know all the brands, but you don't know what the company's about. And when I started digging into it, I really said, like, this is something that is embedded in the culture, not because you have to drink it, but in our country, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, there's always something that has to do with celebration. And in some shape or form, there's always a good spirit being shared, called from rum, whiskey, tequila, gin, vodka, and so on. So 2006 is when I joined officially the spirits industry, started my career in Venezuela with Diageo. And 3 years later, I got the opportunity to get into be transferred to the US. And since then, 2009, 17 years here in the US is where my career definitely has been taking different paths and has been one more challenging than the other, but as well, very rewarding. So that's in a nutshell part of how I started in the industry.
Well, and I'd love to go back one step to Venezuela, just curiosity. What is, I guess, the main spirit of Venezuela? Is there a traditional drinking, instance or occasionally? I'd love to hear a little bit about what it was for you growing up that sticks in your brain about the celebration and spirits element.
Sure. So it's a very interesting question, because if you go back to when you're in your teenage years, legal drinking age, let's call it, and you start kind of getting that experience, the most that you tend to drink is beer and rum, because rum is produced locally, and beer, we had one of the best and biggest companies of beer across the whole Latin America. And as you keep evolving, you realize that since you were a little kid, there was always a whiskey bottle, a Scotch whiskey bottle in your house. That was your dad's, that was your grandparents', that was for special occasions, but also you could see that they used to drink it on the day to day. And from that moment, you start understanding that is an evolution, and you almost graduate, and it's a status symbol when you go from beer, rum into Scotch. And the biggest consumption for Scotch is a very interesting fact that if you go back to the early 2000s, Scotch whiskey, meaning Venezuela, was the third biggest consumption per capita country in the world. I think it was only overcome by France, and if I'm not mistaken, it was Dominican Republic. And in America, you're not talking about total volume, you're talking about per capita. And when you double dig into that, the consumption was mostly 12 years old and above, aging.
Yeah.
So 12 years age, call it Johnny Walker Black, Buchanan, Chivas Regal, and so on. And all the way to 18, Malt, and the blue labels of the world on age. That was the biggest consumption. And one anecdote that to add to that is that in my old days when I started in Diageo, part of the global team came to Venezuela because they didn't understand how we could consume so much Scotch. And they realized that it was because when you go out for lunch, you don't ask for a single drink and that's it. You ask for a bottle of Scotch. It's a status of symbol that you put in there and say, okay, this is my status. This is my statement. And I'm going to open this bottle. And they say, but you drink the whole bottle? Say, no, that's why one of the original countries where the locker concept came from is from Venezuela. Because what you wanted to do is leave that bottle, maybe half of it, and then when you come back the next time with another customer, with another friend, the waiter and the captain of the waiters will greet you by your name and say, Jordan, hello, welcome back. I have your bottle in the locker. That will give you an automatic status. And that's what happened with it until I would say till today, that's still the case. But for different reasons, consumption kind of like fluctuated. Now you have other markets that are higher in consumption per capita. But that's how we grew up And that's why for me, starting working with such a great Scotch portfolio made sense at that point.
That's really fascinating. I would have never guessed that Scotch, premium mark Scotch, was the number one choice of Venezuela.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. Is there a brand that was, obviously in the US you have all the marks, but like Macallan holds some cachet, Johnny Blue has cachet, you have the high mark Glenfiddich and Balvini's. Was there a brand that sticks in your mind as like, this was the one that people were aspiring to or really showed the peak status in the community?
Yes. And there were two. And I'm going to mention why. There was Doers.
Okay.
And Doers was the one that actually came with the idea of the aging times pricing. So when you went to an on-premise, you asked for a Doers white label. And if you asked for a Doers 12, basically the price was the same. But they started segmenting that. And that's when started kind of linking to pricing. And the second one, which was the biggest market for that brand, was James Buchanan's. So Buchanan's was a big one. And this goes all back to the days of the oil industry. Venezuela is a big oil industry country. And when the Scottish came to Venezuela to work on the oil platforms and build these big things, they brought whiskey brands with them. And between those brands, they brought Buchanan's, they brought Old Parr, and that established in there from the 70s all the way to the 2000s. But those were the two brands that were the most selling ones, Doers and Buchanan's.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So I could talk about that all day, but we got to talk about you a little bit more. So you've worked with some really enormous conglomerates, Diageo, Philip Morris, and now you're working with the emerging smaller brands. What was the prompt for you, or the impetus to make that shift from being big company, big brand, to now being much more hands-on with emerging or smaller brands?
Yes, that's an excellent segue to what has been the last 11, 12 years. Is that when I was at Diageo, there was a big operation back in the 2012, 2013 between Diageo and the Cuervo family, where they did this triple operation, and Diageo bought the Don Julio. They got the rights for Smirnoff in Mexico, and then they gave back Cuervo to the Cuervo family, and they sold Bushmills, the Irish whiskey. When that happened, Diageo set a trajectory that said, let's focus on premium agaves. And that was back to 2012, 2013. And I was involved in different projects of different brands that were acquired in the future. And in 2016, sort of like not a magic ball, but a light came to my head and said, hold on, I speak Spanish fluently. I've been already traveling to Mexico several times a year for business, and I know the route to market in the US. So what about if I know there's going to be a bunch of brands that I want to go get through into the US? It's so complicated, the three-tier system. And I can offer at least that contact, that connection between your brand owner into the US distributor, importer, etc. And that's when I decided to take that risk. I had the opportunity with an independent company to start that path. And I remember October 2016, I said, you know what? I'm going to take a shot at this and see how it goes. And it was a lot of risk in the sense, if you think about it, because you come from such a great company, very well established, you have all the benefits, perks, and suddenly you have a 4-year-old guy. We just moved into the US 7 years ago, and you're taking this risk at all. And from that day on, I've worked in different projects. Mostly, I would say 90% of them have been agave-forward oriented. And I've been working different shape or forms, different brands, different owners, different sort of like legal entities. And that's what I've been doing now, is taking a brand, helping them structure, reorganize, route to market, connections, getting up and rolling, and just launching into the markets. And from there, some of them going to exit with big companies. Some of them, they just stay independent and find other paths through a different cap table and different investors. Yeah, and it's been already almost 11 years since that.
And in the 11 years of doing that, what is your, I guess, I don't want to say your secret sauce. I don't want you to give away your secret here, but what is your approach to taking these emerging brands and then creating a foundation that lets them scale? And then how do you scale? Because that, 0 to 1 and then 1 to 10 is really difficult. 10 to 100 almost sometimes can be easier because you figured out a little bit of the motion. But what is that kind of your approach mentally when you say, I'm taking a new brand, I want to start building it? What are you doing when it comes to that like first step of retail execution?
Yeah, I think the first one, and is the hardest one for many owners or independent brands to hear, is that I repeat this word a lot of times, narrow and deep. So the first thing that many brands want is, I want to get into the US, I want to go to 10,000 cases in 1 year, and I want to go into all the Total Wines and ABCs and BevMos and Specs of the world. And that for me has been the number one mistake. It's very tempting, super tempting, because you can get, to your point, from 10 to 100 in one night when they open and authorize your product in one of the big chain stores. But there comes a piece about, if you're not narrow and deep, if you're not focused, your cash burn is going to increase significantly. And you're going to be out of cash in 1 year, and then you're not going to be able to support that brand in that customer. And guess what? As soon as you got listed, you're going to get delisted in less than 12 months, sometimes even less. So I would say that I love the word you put, the secret sauce. There's no secret to it. It's just be patient, be focused, and be very narrow and deep. And it's not easy to digest. It's very easy to say those words, but when you're dealing with different characters, different ownerships, different investors, different interests in what they want to obtain from that brand, then, or portfolio, you have to repeat this. You have to show it. You have to prepare a plan. You have to be very detailed into it and not go too fast, because then as soon as you go too fast up, you're going to go in too fast down.
Yeah. Well, and even with the narrow and deep element, something I've had a lot of conversations about is which market you select is actually as important as is the product itself. You can easily go, I want to be in Miami. I want to be in Los Angeles. I want to be in New York. They're the big markets, the big spending markets, but they're also the most competitive. So when you're taking a new brand and you're merging in capital as a constraint, how do you kind of think about the actual market itself? Do you look for the more, winnable markets, or you look for the higher volume markets?
So it's a very excellent question, because it would vary depending on the nature of the brand. Let's say if you're getting a very premium crafted gin, or if you're getting entry-level price tequila, right? There's going to be two different approaches. And that's when you have to do the legwork of saying, okay, what is the price point? How's the competitors in this market? Is this a pay-to-play market? Is this more open on loyalty and building relationships? Do I have the resources to either pay for it, or do I have the resources to hire the right team that's going to build those relationships? So I think that's the first exercise that we do, which has to do with budget. Then when it comes to the market, one of the other things that is always a big, big check is we don't talk about going to Florida, going to Texas, going to New York, going to Illinois. We talk about going to Miami. We talk about going to one zip code, maybe. We talk about going to New York City, and we choose one borough. We go about going to Texas, and maybe we over-index in Austin instead of going to Dallas, which might be more tempting, bigger. But you have to understand what is the size of the market. If you can over-index, that for me is a big green go check signal, which is if we can over-index that market, you can prove a model, you can learn from it, but you don't spend that much cash at the beginning. And then you can replicate that model. Take it and say, well, I did this very successful in Austin. Let's repeat this in Tampa, or let's repeat in Orlando instead of going to Miami first. Let's understand what happens when we can tap and over-index that category, that market, or getting more for our bucks, getting more bucks for our dollars in each of these instances. And most important then after that, when you do the budget exercise, the market / city or zip code, then comes the channel. And that's the piece that sometimes we take for granted and say, well, let's go to 30 accounts. And going to 30 accounts can be very vague if you don't have a real plan and say, okay, my brand, the way how it's going to go, because of packaging, because of price, it's going to be easier to get a faster understanding, return, and pull if I go to the on-premise, because I can tackle as a cocktail. I can tackle as a menu placement instead of just putting on the shelf, which again, is going to move more volume at the beginning, but then comes the velocity. And if you don't get that, then the brand starts dying. So budget piece, market / zip code or city approach, channel, and then comes the KPIs, which we can talk further because I know that Eileen helps on that, but it's how you measure that success and taking the decisions. Sometimes it's not easy to cut things. Look, we tried it. It didn't work. Let's unplug it. Let's try in another market. Let's see what we learned from this one. And if it didn't work, then we need to go back to square one and see what didn't work. So those learnings and resetting and being nimble, agile to understand that you need to change or shift, but also be consistent is kind of the right balance between how you go from your every dollar counting to a brilliant execution that is giving you the right results that you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really smart approach. And how much is the omni-channel element part of that strategy? Are you balancing on-prem and off-prem when you go to these markets, or is that also very based off of the brand and the brand strategy?
So I wish there could be a perfect formula for it, right? And there are brands where I've worked with them where they lean 80-20 on-premise, off-premise. There are brands that are 50-50. And it has to do as well with the type of product and the pricing. And I would say that there's not a perfect answer on that balance. What I would say is, if it is an early stage brand, the best way to build that, and if it's a new to the world, let's say that a brand that just launched and is only in one or two markets, my recommendation would always be go to the on-premise and tackle some independent liquor stores that might be in a radius of maybe no more than 6 to 8 miles. So people can try it, taste it, educate bartenders, work with them on the relationships, and they can recommend, look, the cocktail that you tried today, Jordan, you can find it in X liquor store that is just 4 miles from here. And definitely you can replicate it. I'll give you the ingredients. That sort of connection is how you start generating that link from the on-premise, trying the experience, into the off-premise to try to replicate at home. And there are some brands that are meant to be off-premise, which might be, let's say, a value price premium tequila, let's say in the $25 range. People already know the category, even though it's a new brand. They know what to do with the product. It's not a barrier where you get a bottle, you don't know what to do with it. You already know what to do, and you get, okay, this is $25, is 40%, is a Blue Water agave, 100% agave. I'll take this bottle and I'll try it, because you don't have too much to lose into that price point. And those are, there's going to be case by case, but I would always recommend that first check how the health of your brand is and the price point, and starting the on-premise.
I think it's a really smart approach. And in line with that, we've talked in the past a bit about your strategy when it comes to distributor partnerships and alignment. And you kind of also take a counterintuitive approach there, not working with or at least avoiding a national alignment in favor of something where it's a little bit more state by state, market by market. Can you just walk through that logic and how you tackle that with your current brand?
Yes. This is something that I've learned, let's say, the hard way, because everything that I'm sharing with you now has not always been like, this is perfect, everything has worked smoothly. I've had several failures and I've learned from it. And I think that's the best thing, that even if you have a failure, you have to understand how to readapt, reset, and continue. Not put your head down and kind of like cry and lament for maybe, a couple of months. No, you have to continue on. And the distributor one has been, or the 3-tier system has been, one of the most awakening, but yet great experience that I've had. And without naming the brands, I can share 2 examples. One is, when you're an independent brand, let's call it small in volume, less than maybe 5,000 cases, even 10,000 cases. Going to a big distributor, it's going to be basically going into a dead end. Why?
Yeah.
Because when you get into it, the first thing they're going to ask you, and this is totally valid from a distributor the size of the 3 or 4 big ones, is that they're going to ask you, give me your plan. What are your resources? How many people you have? In what states do you have them? What is your budget for incentives? DA, how are you going to support quotas? Are you willing to support an end of year, a volume push program for O&D? And when you start adding that up, you're talking that sometimes in one market, and just rough numbers, like Florida, if you're going to go with one of the big ones, you're going to need maybe between all the resources that I mentioned, maybe close to $700,000 to $1 million, $700,000 to $1 million.
Just to support.
Just to support that market for 1 year.
Yeah.
That's a reality. And you're talking a brand of around 10,000 cases, right? And the second part of that is that when you get into that, let's say that you have all those resources and you can make it, you're going to be competing with the 3-4 big companies that already signed national multi-state agreements with these distributors. And what's going to happen is that you're going to get lost, because you cannot compete with that muscle. So I think that example of that brand is not a right or wrong, is when is the right stage to get into the next level where you graduate and you can go to a national partnership with a national distributor.
Yeah.
On the other hand, other brands that might be similar volume, maybe 10,000 cases, but you go to a regional approach. You say, okay, which are the best distributor partners that I can get in the Southeast? Which are the ones that I can get in the Central area? Which are the ones that I can get in the Midwest, and so on? You approach them. And in this case, you're still going to have to do the plan. You're going to have to show resources, but now you're talking about micro environments. You're talking about maybe 5, 6 states, sometimes 3, 2, and you are able to show that, well, I have a regional position, one person that covers these 6 states, but he's going to be based in, let's talk example of Midwest, he's going to be based in Illinois, in Chicago, and he can go and cover the other 5 surrounding states, and I want to work with you into this region. And when you show that you're 10,000 cases, now you're not 10,000 cases competing against 1 million cases brand. Now you become a big fish in that pond, because most of the brands that might have regional, it might be around that number, between 5 to 20,000 cases brands. So this is where you get that relevance. This is where the distributors, most of the regional distributors, something that has to take my hat off, is that they have this approach where they say, we'll invest with you 50%, 50-50 on incentives and on samples. So that reduces your cost a lot, where you can invest that other 50% into execution at the point of sale, into building relationships in the on-premise. So I would say that there's not a right or wrong, is what's the stage of your brand, what is the budget that you have, and what are your plans on expanding nationally or going into winning markets and segments and almost clusters to get into the next stage.
Yeah, I think it's always kind of again a sports analogy. You want to win 10 fights before you go for that. You want to be 10-0. You don't want to have an 0-1 record to start your career. So I think
that is perfect. That is a perfect analogy. Exactly.
And so one of the things I'm interested in addition to what you're talking about, capital use and attention, how does that experience differ when it comes to, let's say, in-store execution? So if you're a smaller brand in the big distributor house, you do get some of the muscle power they have, but what does that do when it comes time to actually execution? Are you getting a better service, worse service, same? Like, what did you notice versus those smaller distributors and then the big distributors when you're on the shelf of ABC Fine Wine?
Yes. So it's one thing that it's, I would say, ironic and funny is that there's the same level of service that you get from a big distributor that an independent small distributor. And let me clear on that, because that can be sometimes a little bit sort of like generate controversy. But the reality is that distributors, and they're more clear nowadays on what they do. They say, I'm going to support your brand. I'm going to put it in this point of sale. I'm going to augment distribution. I'm going to find some appointments for you into these national accounts. But then my team is not the one that is going to sell. That's where you need to bring your resources. So distributors are made to move your product from point A to point B and breach those relationships with customers. That's the reality. What happens to many suppliers, I put myself in that bag maybe 10 years ago, is that our expectation is that distributor sales reps are going to go and sell your product. And it's not that they don't want, it's that they can't. Physically, they can't. They have a portfolio of 40, 50 brands where they need to sell it. And each of these brands, they have different programs, different quotas, depending on the month, depending on the quarter. And it's not that they don't want your brand. It's just that they need to sell. Part of their salary structure is that way, where they get a small fixed salary and then the rest is all commission. And that commission, I would put myself in their shoes. I would do exactly the same. I would sell whatever is going to go into my bank account on the 15th or the 30th. So that is the first thing that is a reality check, is don't expect your distributor to be your sales team on the ground. That's why you need to put your sales team, your resources. So with that, when I'm going with your question is, the fact that a big distributor can get you into national accounts faster is true. That is true. Now, you don't want to go too fast into that as well. And this is a real life story that I had. And I learned from that. It was not a good experience, but I learned and I never repeated it again. We said, yes, let's go into the 200 plus stores of the biggest national chain of liquor store. And yes, I want to be with all these 3 variants. Let's go and do it. They did it. They turn it on. Suddenly, one day to the other, you are in 200 stores and your product is in there. Guess what? The first question that comes, okay, when are you going to be planning your tastings? When are you going to be planning your samples? And when you multiply 200 stores times, you need to do, let's say, 50% of that. You're going to do tastings. And those tastings are 300 or north of that per 3-hour tasting. Plus, you need to buy samples. And you multiply that budget, you're talking about couple of $100,000 just on that customer. Crazy. For maybe a period of 3-4 months to support a pool. And if you don't do it, then they start listing. From 200 stores, you get into 150. From 150, you get into 100. And that's what I was mentioning. Going too fast up without understanding the cost of that is very tempting, but it's very easy to go very fast down on that kind of journey. So be nimble, be selective. Even if you have the big arm of any of the 3 big distributors, just go with the approach of say, I don't want to go into all the stores of this big chain. I want to go by cluster. Give me the top 10 stores that are indexed, let's say the example, agave. And I want to go into those 10 stores in Florida. And I want to go to the next 10 in Texas. Even though they have 30 or 40 in those markets, I don't want to do that. Those 10 I can support. I have the budget for it. I have the agency that have the capacity for it. I have the sales resources that can go shake hands, learn the name of the manager. Jordan, hi, my name is David. I represent Bozal, and I know you're the manager of this store in liquor store in Doral, Florida. I'm going to be here. I'm going to visit you. I'm going to be coming. I'm going to do a tasting myself, some of them. I'm going to have an agency that can do more repetitive. Let me know what you need. Do you need some POS? Do you need some samples? Tell me what's the best time to come and do a tastings. And those are real examples that I do. Until the day of today, I do it. I go, I know the names. I have the speed dial, not speed dial, but I have in my contacts, I have the names of the managers of different liquor chain stores, independents. And that's the way how you build that. So the same way you build relationships in the on is the same way how you need to build them in the off, just a different approach, different pace, and different audience. So I would say that that's my suggestion. Instead of a big distributor, quick, big wins. Small distributor can give you quick wins as well, but you need to be very focused on what you want to approach and how much it's going to cost you, and if you have the budget and resources.
Is there a signal or a moment in time when you're looking at those brands that you've built out in the small distributor footprint, but you see there's potential for the big national opportunity? I think Illegal Mezcal, I believe, you spent a lot of time building that brand. Big time Mezcal brand, really changed the category. When does that moment come to you? We go, okay, now it's time to open the floodgates because there's an opportunity. Or is that something you looked at and said, okay, this is built up enough that we can repeat it? Or is it just kind of more lightning in a bottle with a brand that they can do that?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it in your question. Is you need to have the base and the numbers to say, okay, I have a good velocity on this brand. I know that this brand is now generating maybe 4 or 5 cases per account per month. And we were maybe in 1.5 cases just a year ago. So there's a real velocity. There's a real health of the brand. You start seeing that the brand is now showing in cocktails, in menus, in back bars. People are seeing it. You're seeing that there's a relationship when you take the velocity and you split it and say, what's my velocity in the on-premise? Let's say it's 4 or 5 cases a month per account. And then you go to the off, say, well, the off is being around 1 or 2 cases a month per store.
Yeah.
It's never going to be the same volume, but that's where you say, okay, I'm generating pull in both channels. So that means that consumers are considering my brand in different occasions when they go out or when they're staying at home. That's the moment when you get the first signal, say, I think the brand is ready to start now expanding into bigger clusters, more chains, more on-premise groups. Now I can approach them, because also that's when you take that decision, you're going to have to go and either with a distributor or on your own, depending on the RFP process they have, and go and present to some national accounts, call it the Darden Group. They have a gazillion concepts of restaurants. And when you go to them, the first question they're going to ask you right off the bat, which makes sense, even before the pricing, is tell me about the brand. What's the health of your brand? Do you have any Nielsen data? And if you don't, okay, can you show me your velocity? Can you show me what Compass in the distributor is giving you as a result of all they've done in the rolling 12? What is your biggest market? What is your biggest customer? So they start asking those questions that if you're not ready for it and you don't have a case really well built, then they're going to say, thank you so much. We'll call you. Kind of like a regular interview from HR, you never hear from them. Now, if you go with all the success stories and you show and you prove the numbers and you have the hard data on it, they're going to give you the chance. And that's when you commit to it. And that's when you start now hiring more people. And that's when you're going to start having more investment into generating more interaction, events, activations with these customers. Now, that's the hard data part. That's how you can prove it. The second part of it, and it's just equal and important, it's the budget. And in these cases, an example of like Ilegal, then came a big player behind it into the early stages and say, okay, I'm going to invest into it. I'm going to have a share of the company, of the brand. And with that injection of money, then you can hire more resources and you can support all the tastings, activations. That's what you can do. So it's a mix of the brand has to show health. Doesn't matter if it is in one state, one city, but you have to show that health. And the second one is, do you have the budget and resources to go into it? So once you have those two, then you're ready to start expanding exponentially, if you may.
Amazing. No, I think that's a great perspective, and it's a good route that I think has a much stronger and stable foundation than you usually see. And obviously, we see a lot with brands that are rapidly growing, but it's almost like the wheels are coming off the car in mid motion, just because it's happening so quickly, and you don't have those systems in place. You don't have the repeatable nature of how are you going to manage accounts. It's different when you can walk into Doral and talk to the manager is one thing, but when you now have, 5,000 stores in California that you can't see, I think that opens that question a lot of times for brands where they're not really ready to say like, oh, I don't have a strategy yet. I got to figure that out. So yeah, I think that's a really good approach of how do you, build the ship before departing from the port. Couple questions I would love to ask people in the end of this interview is really just about your experience and how you might reapproach the Bev career or the CPG career. So going back to the beginning, now that you've done all of this for so many years and you've had such great experience, and would you want to get back into this industry? And then two, what are some of the key takeaways that you have now that you wished you would have known in the very beginning about building a career in this world?
I love that question. And I guess that's why you do it almost at the end, because it makes you think deeper into it. But I love it. And I would say that the first part of the question, if I go back 20, 25 years ago, would I get back into this industry? The answer would be yes, without hesitation. I think that this industry, it's the way I call it is or how I see it is that we are not selling a bottle of booze. What we're doing is selling or inviting consumers to enhance their experiences, their social gatherings. And that's what really connects people. I'm a true believer. I'm a very extroverted person. I love to meet people. I love to really create relationships. And I think that excuse of call it from a beer, call it from a whiskey, from a tequila, from a drink, from a cocktail, it gives you that excuse to break that ice, to really remember magical nights. Again, everything with moderation. But that's what I like about this industry. We're more than only selling a product. We are, in fact, enhancing experiences. And then the second part of the question about what would I love that I would have known maybe 20, 25 years ago, and those are the biggest takeaways that I have nowadays. One of them is be very disciplined. And discipline has to do with when you say that you're going to go narrow and deep and you want to bet on this for 2 years, then don't get desperate on the mark of the 6 months. Because you say, well, 6 months have gone by, I have not achieved this, and I need to move faster. Maybe instead of staying in one city, what about if we open the whole state? And that can be very tempting because you want to get results right away. You have pressure in this startup entrepreneur world from the board and from the CEO or the owner. And you want to show quickly that maybe was David 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays is where those are the toughest conversations, but are the most enriching one where you say, no, let's sit down. Let me explain where our path is. Yes, we might be slower than we thought, but look at these indexes. And that's where the KPIs and how you measure and how you invest into having real tracking in your systems and your products. That's what can give you the right facts to go and convince and put on your side everyone that is pushing to get quickly into it. So I would say patience, which is stick to the plan, be disciplined, be narrow and deep. And the second one is value the relationships more than anything. And relationship is not because you're expecting a favor from Jordan that owns this restaurant. That's not what it should be. Actually nurture your relationships, because you might end up selling a product to that customer, you might not. But your name starts getting attention into this guy really cares about us. And we have not even bought a bottle from him. And, he's a great guy. And maybe that guy, maybe Jordan, the next 2 years is going to be in a different company.
Yeah.
And maybe you also, David, is going to be in a different project. And now there's a real chemistry into, oh, you know what? I know that now I have the product that is the right one for your venue. Yeah. And that comes because it's a relationship built. So in a nutshell, patience and discipline is one that you have to stick to it. And the second one would be build relationships in a very authentic way, not because you're expecting something from someone.
That's a great point. It's the difference between having a job and building a career. If you have that network,
100%
foundation, doesn't matter the brand, doesn't matter the moment in time, but you have a network of people who you can work with at any time. So I think that's a great perspective and something everybody starting out in this world should absolutely take to heart. So David, thank you again. This has been an incredible conversation. I've really loved learning more about your background and how you build brands. And you really do have a blueprint that others can follow without having to have unlimited resources. If you have a brand, it sounds like you can get out there, follow this narrow, deep approach, and then scale up when the market's telling you it's time. So that's a wrap for today. If anything we talked about sounds familiar, flat velocity, distributors telling you everything looks fine, but you haven't seen a shelf in weeks or months. Come visit us at shopwitheileen.com. We'll help you get your first 10 stores for free. And as always, thanks for listening and know thy shelf.